Hey team, I wanted to post a bonus video that deals with APA formatting, specifically your references and in-text citations. All right, I will use the journal article that you see here. I actually ended up taking a screenshot of it because when I tried to use two applications, um, Adobe Acrobat and Word together, the video came out really distorted. So I'm taking, another stab at it. This is about take 5, and I realized that using a screenshot is a little bit better. I will be attaching this article just in case you want it for easier reference. So it will be attached to the announcement. All right. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to start with a reference, and then we're going to actually go ahead and learn how to do a narrative citation and a parenthetical citation and really understand what's the difference between the two. Okay, so for your reference, first thing you want to do, right, first part of your reference is your authors. Notice that we have a lot of authors here. We have 5, and those 5 need to be accounted for. Laura M. Graves happens to be our primary author, and you can tell by the A1 that's right on top of her name on the right-hand side, and then you have Kristen, who's the second author, right, and so forth and so forth. So let's go ahead and start with Laura Graves, and we're going to start actually with her last name. Let me actually remove the bold. All right, so we're going to start with her last name here, Graves, comma, right? Then we're going to insert the first initial of her first name, followed by a period. And then we have, of course, a space, and then we put in the initial of her middle name, which is an M. All right. Then we're going to put a period and then a comma, because again, we have 4 other authors to account for. Now, keep in mind, if we only had one author, we would remove the comma, add a space, and go straight into the publication year, right? But that's not the case. So we're going to go ahead and add that comma, enter, colon, comma. Oh, don't forget my caps, right? And I'm going to go ahead and do all of the authors. So just stick around and look at the screen. It's really hard to type and write and speak at the same time. All right, so that was the 3rd author. I'm up to the 4th one here. Middle initial, right? And then we add a period and then a comma. All right, so now I am about to enter my last author. And what you want to do is use the and sign right here, ampersand, and go ahead and write the last person's last name, first initial of their first name, period, and the first initial of their middle name, and then a period. So those are your authors, all right? I'm going to go ahead and add the second part of the reference, which is your publication year. And I got that from right here. That is the publication year. Now notice in the article, there is article information and there's history, right? But that won't give you the proper publication year, okay? This is just its history. So you want to make sure that you're looking for the actual publication year somewhere at the top. Sometimes it actually even lands right after the journal title and the authors, okay? All right, so that's the publication year. Notice that every time we finish a segment of the reference, like for example, these are the authors, we have a period. Now that we know what our publication year is, we're gonna add another period, okay? And then what do you think is the next step, team? That's right, it's your journal article. So I'm going to go ahead and type that up here. Give me a moment. Notice that this title has a colon, and you will need to capitalize the C in composition, right? And antecedents, comma, and consequences. All right. So yes, you definitely, anytime you have a punctuation, even if it was an exclamation point, you would certainly capitalize the first word right after it, but this is a colon. And notice that it is in sentence case. one of the easiest ways to turn something into sentence case is by going up here. And for some reason, oh, no, sorry, that was the wrong one. That's actually formatting if you wanted to keep the same format, right? But if you go over here, notice that you have different options. For example, all of this now is uppercase, right? Let's go back to sentence case and remember to capitalize any word after a punctuation. All right, so that is your journal article name. It should be always sentence case, all right? Now we're gonna add another period, right? Because that's we're done with that segment, right? We're done with the journal article name. So what is the journal's name? It's staring right at you, right? So Journal of Vocational Behavior. So I'm gonna go ahead and type that up if I can type this morning. And then after I do this, ooh, this is all caps here, and you want it to be sentence case. Well, actually, you don't want it to be sentence case. You just want those to be lowercase, right? So I'm going to add a period here. So the most important thing with this, notice that it is not sentence case, right? You have to capitalize like if you were writing a title, right? So of doesn't get capitalized, but every word around it does. And you want to make sure to italicize your journal. It's very, very important. I'm not sure why I added a period, right? Because technically you would add a period after the end of a segment, as I mentioned, but we actually are not done with this segment. So within the journal, you want to keep narrowing down for the reader where it actually, where the article actually lives, right? So for example, for this one, yes, it is in Journal of Vocational Behavior, but as you notice here, it is also volume 87, okay? Notice that there is no issue number, right? 2015 is not the issue number. That is, in fact, the year, okay? So we're gonna add a comma because that's continuing the thought. We're gonna add that 87. We're gonna leave it italicized as well. Now we had a issue number. We would add parentheses. Let's say the issue number was 4, and we would make sure that this is not italicized. All right, and that's how your volume and edition number would look like, or issue number, sorry. But that is not the case. We do not have an issue number. So we're gonna add another comma, not a period, okay? Add a space, and then we're gonna put the page range, which so happens to be 32 to 42, all right? We aren't adding any abbreviations to the page numbers. We're not doing this, right? We're not adding just one P, right? We're not adding page abbreviations. We are adding the exact page number range, which is 32 to 42, okay? Now you can add a period. I was super excited to add it after the journal, but again, you have to continuously narrow it down for the reader before you add that period. So that means including the journal article, the actual journal, right? Including the volume. If there is a issue number, you would include that in parentheses, not italicized, and then followed by the page range, okay? Now, the last thing that is usually included, and if you find that in your journal articles you don't have a DOI, that's totally fine. That you won't add a DOI, right? But this article right at the bottom so happens to have its DOI. So I had copied it because if not, we would be here forever. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it here and actually format it to fit everything else. And as you notice, I finally used that button that I kept clicking on, right? So that also changes the formatting to what you had previously, okay? Notice that I don't have DOI in front. Now, last time I showed you APA, the DOI was, the words DOI, right, were included right before the URL. And honestly, that's not a deal breaker in APA formatting. Now, your most updated edition says you don't need it, but it's not like, you know, I've seen it in articles, I've seen it everywhere. So it's not, again, a deal breaker, but we're gonna follow the most updated revised APA manual. And it does say that you do not need that DOI abbreviation in there, okay? The second thing that I wanted to show you with the DOI is that you don't need a period at the end of it. So I know I've gotten you all into the habit of adding a period after every segment within the reference. But the idea is that if I'm looking at this reference, I can just copy this URL and go straight to my browser, right? And go ahead and look it up, right? If I had a period, that may distort the URL and I won't be able to find the page, okay? So the last thing, right, you must think that we're done now, right? But we are not. The last thing that we have to do with our reference is I like to do this by adding a space or hitting return. I don't know what it is for other computers, but I'm using a Mac. So just a space, which is return. And then I'm going to indent that second sentence, right? Which in return indents the third, which I want. Okay, so usually, when you're writing paragraphs, the first sentence gets indented, right? But with your references, it's actually everything after the first line, okay? And again, I just added a space and I use this feature right here at the top. Oh, sorry, that's the decrease. I increased the indent, okay? If you have any questions, feel free to email me about that. Now I want to show you all your narrative citations. And I'm actually going to delete the article for now, just so that it makes it easier to really point out how to do your narrative and parenthetical citations. So these are the in-text citations that I've been seeing many of you do, and most of the time they are accurate, but I just wanted to show you the differences and make sure that everyone is on the same page. So when it comes to your narrative citations, that is when you are, again, not within your reference page, but when you are actually writing your lit review. So sometimes you want to refer to an article. Sometimes I've been seeing in our papers that we refer to journal articles as, in this journal article, right? We will write in this journal article, or we will say the researchers, wow, I'm hungry now. The researchers, right, are, and then you would continue your sentence. This is actually incorrect, right? You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to write the journal article or the researcher said, right? You are supposed to cite, because at the end of the day, as your reader, I don't know which journal article you're referring to if you didn't reference or cite it, right? So instead of saying in this journal article, or sometimes I've seen according to this article, right? So instead of that, I'm going to write according to Graves, right, et al. 2015. Notice I added that space, right? Motivation is the most important factor, and so forth and so forth. So that's how you want to write your narrative citations. Now, when you have multiple authors, you need to make sure that you introduce all of the authors first. So what I mean by that, the first time that you use the reference, you're not going to use et al. You're actually going to use everyone's name. So I'm just removing their initials because you never have their initials when you are within your lit review, right? Only when you have your reference page. And notice I changed the ampersand to and because we are writing, right? We will not be using symbols unless it's within a parenthetical citation, which we'll go over next. So this also would be according to Graves, right? And then motivation and so forth, right? So you'll use this one first when you are first referencing the journal article, right? And then once you have introduced everyone, you will go ahead and use et al., which is the shortcut, okay? Now let's go ahead and look at parenthetical citations. So parenthetical citations really serve the same purpose. It's just a little bit different. Usually when you use parenthetical citations, you're making a claim and you're not necessarily focusing on the article. So for example, with narrative, you're saying according to this article. But when you need backup for a phrase, for example, if you say literature shows, right? Literature shows that motivation if I can type, is the most important factor, right? You're making a huge claim there. So you need to be able to back that up, right? Even if you say researchers have shown, right? Who are these researchers? So you can definitely make that claim, but at the end, you will need to add in parentheses your parenthetical citation, which looks like this, right? So instead of the space, we're going to add a comma, then a space, and then write our publication year. Okay, so you see the difference here? This is our parenthetical. This is our narrative citations. One is within parentheses. The other one is not in parentheses. Another thing that I've noticed is sometimes we put the period, so it's a little bit difficult because I have all of these periods here. Let me move it up. Let me move this up here. Okay, so what I have also been seeing is that sometimes people have been putting periods here and then putting it at the end of the parenthetical citation. That is incorrect. You want to just make sure that it's within the sentence, okay? If you had another research article, because remember, you're saying literature shows, so I would assume that you have found this, this claim more than once, right? So you would add this punctuation right there, that semicolon, and go ahead and introduce the next article that will back up this claim. All right, so I hope that helps understand a little bit more how references work, narrative citations, and parenthetical citations. Now it's your turn, okay? So I'm actually going to also attach an article for you to review, and I would like for you to write the reference of that article, include a narrative citation, which all I'm looking for is this piece, right? If you want to do the longer one, feel free to do that one. And I also want to see a parenthetical citation. All right, so I'm looking for three citations, well, two citations and one reference, right? And when I submit this and you guys get this announcement, basically I want you to submit these three under the announcement. If you do so, you will get 4 points for your next assignment, which happens to be your final paper, okay? So if you want an additional 4 points, I look forward to seeing the reference, the narrative citation, and the parenthetical citation to the article that I will attach. I'm going to attach 2 articles, the one that I used today to show you, so that's not the one I'm talking about. It's going to be the second one, okay? And I hope this helps. If you have any further questions, again, please reach me and have a great day, team.